You clicked because part of you already suspects it. That tomorrow is not truly empty. That the future is not sitting somewhere waiting to be written, but is already there, finished, as real as the chair you are in right now. I chased that idea for months, and the physics did not talk me out of it. It backed me into a corner and confirmed it. The future has, in a strange and exact sense, already happened. How that could possibly be true was the hardest thing I have ever tried to trace, and the deeper I dug, the clearer it became that this was never meant to be common knowledge. It ends in a letter Einstein wrote in March of 1955, only weeks before he died. You do not need a laboratory to follow me down this trail. You need a kitchen table, a clear half hour, and the willingness to look twice at something you were told to stop questioning as a child. Let me tell you where this started, because it did not start with physics. It started with a death. I was reading an old collection of letters one evening, the kind of dusty book you find at an estate sale for $1, and I came across a note Einstein sent to the family of his oldest friend. The friend's name was Michel Besso. The two of them had been close since they were young men in Switzerland, arguing about mechanics and music and everything in between. Besso died in the spring of 1955, and when Einstein wrote to comfort the grieving family, he did not say the usual things. He did not talk about heaven, or memory, or time healing the wound. He wrote something that stopped me cold. He told them that for people who believe in physics, the separation between past, present, and future is only an illusion, however stubborn that illusion might be. Read that again. A dying man, one of the most careful thinkers who ever lived, is comforting a grieving family. And the comfort he offers is that their loss is, in some deep physical sense, not what it appears to be. Because Besso has not vanished into nothing. His life still sits there, in the structure of the universe, exactly where it always was. Now, I have heard soft, dreamy talk about time my whole life. This was not that. This was a physicist, choosing his words at the most serious moment a person faces, and telling the truth as his own equations described it. So I asked the obvious question. Was this just an old man being poetic, or did he mean it literally, as physics? That question is what pulled me in, because the more I read, the more I realized he meant it exactly, technically, mathematically. And the reason it felt shocking to me is that somewhere along the way, this had been quietly dropped from the story we all get told about time. Somebody preferred the simple version, the ticking clock, the flowing river, the future that does not exist yet. But that comforting picture was already dead by the time Einstein wrote that letter. It had been dead, in fact, for almost 50 years, and the man who killed it was not even Einstein. His name was Hermann Minkowski, and to understand what he did, you have to go back to a lecture hall in Germany. Therefore, we go back to the autumn of 1908. Minkowski had actually been one of Einstein's mathematics teachers years before, and he had not been impressed with the young Einstein. He once called him a lazy dog. So there is a real human twist in the fact that this same teacher would take his former student's work and reveal something inside it that Einstein himself had not fully seen. In September of 1908, Minkowski stood up in front of a gathering of scientists in the city of Cologne and opened with words that people still quote today. He said that from that moment on, space by itself and time by itself were doomed to fade into mere shadows, and only a union of the two would keep any independent reality. Think about how bold that is. He is telling a room full of respected physicists that the two most basic things they think they understand, space and time, are not really separate at all, that they are two faces of one single thing. He called it the world. Today we call it space-time. Here is the picture he was painting, and it is the picture that changes everything. Imagine the whole history of the universe, every event that ever happened and ever will happen, laid out as a single, solid, four-dimensional shape. Not a movie playing frame by frame, the entire film reel, already developed, sitting in the can. Every moment of your life is a point in that shape. Your birth is there. This exact second is there. The day you die is there. All of it, fixed, coexisting, real. We call that idea the block universe. And the reason it matters is simple and heavy. If the whole block already exists, then the future is not empty. It is just a part of the shape you have not walked through yet. Now, when I first read that, my gut rebelled, and I suspect yours just did too. Because it feels obviously wrong. The future clearly does not exist yet. I have not decided what I am eating tomorrow. Nothing about tomorrow feels real or fixed. It feels open. So I did what any stubborn person does. I set out to prove Minkowski wrong. And that is where the trail stopped being comfortable. Because to prove him wrong, I had to understand why he said it. And the reason was not philosophy. It was a hard, measurable fact about the universe that had been discovered 3 years earlier, in 1905, by that same lazy dog student. A fact so strange that once you truly grasp it, the block universe stops being a wild idea and becomes almost impossible to avoid. That fact is called the relativity of simultaneity. And it is the single most important thing on this entire trail, therefore I need you to stay with me while I make it plain. Here is what everybody believes, without ever thinking about it. We all assume there is one universal now, one single present moment, that stretches across the whole universe. Right now, as you sit there, you assume that everything everywhere is also experiencing right now, at the same instant. The idea that two things happen at the same time seems like the most obvious thing in the world. Either two events happen together, or they do not. Surely that is a plain fact that everyone anywhere would agree on. That belief is wrong, and it is not wrong as a matter of opinion. It is wrong as a matter of measured, tested, engineered fact that the machines in your pocket rely on every single day. Einstein showed that whether two events happen at the same time depends entirely on how you are moving. Two people moving at different speeds will genuinely disagree about whether two distant events happened at the same moment or one before the other. And here is the part that stops the argument dead. Neither of them is wrong. There is no referee. There is no true answer to which one is correct, because the universe does not carry a single master clock. Each of them has their own perfectly valid slice of now, and those slices do not match. I remember sitting at my table with 2 cheap wristwatches, trying to make this feel wrong, and slowly realizing I could not. Because this is not a trick of clocks running fast or slow. It is deeper. It means that your now and my now, if we are moving differently, are literally different sets of events. Your present might include something that is still in my future. My present might include something already in your past. And that is the crack that breaks the whole comfortable picture wide open. Because if my now can contain an event that sits in your future, then that future event has to be just as real and definite as anything in my present. It is not a maybe. It is not a possibility waiting to happen. It is somebody's present, right now. And if it is somebody's solid present, it cannot also be an open, unwritten nothing. It has to already exist. That is the argument in a nutshell. And it left me genuinely unsettled, because I could feel the logic closing like a trap, and I did not have a way out. So let me slow down and show you exactly how this works. Because this is the part that got buried, and it is the part that most people, even educated people, have never once had explained to them clearly. Picture a very long train, moving fast down a straight track. Now imagine lightning strikes both ends of that train at once. Standing on the ground, exactly in the middle, you see both flashes reach your eyes at the same instant. So you say, plainly and correctly, those 2 strikes happened at the same time, but there is a passenger sitting in the exact center of the moving train. And because the train is moving forward, that passenger is rushing toward the flash at the front and away from the flash at the back. So the light from the front reaches the passenger first. From inside the train, the front was struck before the back. Not because of any illusion, because that is genuinely the order in which the light arrived, and light is the fastest messenger the universe allows. Now here is the question that matters. Who is right? You on the ground? Who says they happened together? Or the passenger? Who says the front happened first? The answer physics gives, and this is the answer that took me weeks to truly accept, is that both are right. There is no fact of the matter that overrides them. The universe does not take your side or the passenger's side. Simultaneity is not absolute. It is relative to motion. That is not a figure of speech. That is a tested, confirmed, foundational result, and every satellite guiding your car has to correct for its cousins, or it would fail within hours. So sit with the consequence. If two people moving differently slice up now in different ways, then now is not one universal sheet cutting cleanly across all of reality. Now is more like a knife that tilts depending on how you move. And a tilted slice reaches into what one person calls the future, while the other calls it the present. That was the moment I stopped trying to prove Minkowski wrong, because I finally saw that he was not being fanciful. He was just being honest about what Einstein's mathematics already forced to be true. If there is no single now, there is no clean wall between what exists and what does not yet exist. And if there is no wall, the whole four-dimensional block is just there. All of it, including tomorrow. But something still nagged at me. This tilting, this disagreement about now, seemed like the kind of thing that only shows up at enormous speeds, near the speed of light, in physics problems that have nothing to do with a person sitting in an ordinary house. If the effect is impossibly tiny in everyday life, maybe it is a technicality that does not really touch us. Maybe the future is only theoretically already there, in some way too small to matter. I wanted that to be my escape. It was not. And the thing that closed that door for me is so simple you can act it out this weekend in your own hallway, with nothing but your own 2 feet. Now, I know some of you are thinking this is getting too abstract, that this is for people with chalkboards and equations, not for someone standing in a plain kitchen with an ordinary life to run. This next part is for you especially, because you do not need a single tool, a single dollar, or a single formula to feel the truth of this in your own body. You just need to understand one thought experiment that a physicist named Roger Penrose made famous, and it is often called the Andromeda paradox. Here is the setup, and I want you to picture it as I describe it. There is a galaxy called Andromeda, our nearest large neighbor, sitting about 2.5 million light-years away. That is unimaginably far. Now imagine 2 people standing next to each other on a sidewalk, same street, same instant, standing right beside one another. The only difference is that one of them is standing still, and the other is walking slowly, at an easy stroll, the pace you would use crossing a room. Because of the relativity of simultaneity, those 2 people, standing side by side, do not share the same now when it comes to that distant galaxy. The one standing still has a now in Andromeda at one moment. The one who is gently walking has a now in Andromeda that is different by days, not seconds, days, possibly even longer. If you have been feeling that same pull, that sensation of a door closing on every comfortable assumption you had about time and reality, I want you to know that I went much deeper down this trail in my book, Reset, where I trace exactly how these ideas about the block universe connect to the way we make decisions, carry regret, and imagine the future. It is the kind of book you read once and find yourself returning to, not because it tells you what to think, but because it hands you the tools to think it through yourself. You can find it linked in the description below. Now, let me slow down and show you exactly how this works, because this is the part that got buried, and it is the part that most people, even educated people, have never once had explained to them clearly. Let that land. A slow walking pace. The difference between standing and strolling. And for events that far away, that tiny difference in your own speed slides the distant now back and forth by days. If a great fleet were about to launch from that galaxy, then for the person standing still, the decision to launch might still lie in the undecided future, while for the person taking one casual step it has already happened, already fixed, already part of the past. Same sidewalk, same instant, 2 different presents, and one of them already contains an event the other calls the future. I want you to actually do this. Stand in your hallway. Take one slow step forward. That step you just took, so small, so ordinary, so free, just shifted your slice of now across the universe by an amount that, at great distances, spans days of events. You did that. With your own foot, for no cost, and with no equipment. And if your simple footstep can pull a distant event from the future into the settled past, then that event was never truly open. It was already there, waiting for a slice of now to reach it. That is the whole point of doing it with your body instead of on paper. The relativity of simultaneity is not some exotic thing locked away at the speed of light. It is riding along with your every movement. The effect is tiny for things nearby, which is exactly why our intuition never noticed it and built us a false picture of a single flowing present. But the effect is not zero. It is real at every scale. And for the universe as a whole, that tilt is enough to prove that past, present, and future all coexist in one solid structure. So there it is, and you did not need a physicist's blessing to feel it. One step in your hallway is a demonstration that the future is already laid down. That was the piece that ended my attempts to escape. And it is the piece almost no one is ever shown, even though it costs nothing and hides in a single stroll. But knowing the future already exists opened a far larger and more disturbing question, and this is where the trail turned dark. Because if tomorrow is already written into the block, then what happens to choice? What happens to the sense that you are deciding anything at all? And who, exactly, benefited from keeping this quiet for over 100 years? Let me take the second question first, because it surprised me. I kept expecting to find that some authority had banned this idea, or hidden it, the way things sometimes get buried when they are inconvenient. What I found was stranger and, in a way, worse. Nobody had to ban it. It buried itself because it is uncomfortable. And because a comfortable lie about time is easier to sell and easier to teach. Think about how much of our lives is built on the idea that the future is empty and up for grabs. The endless promise that tomorrow can be different if you just buy this, pay for that, subscribe to this plan, hand over money now for a better later. A settled future is bad for business. A future you must anxiously purchase your way into, over and over, keeps you paying. The flowing river of time, always rushing toward an unwritten tomorrow, is not just an intuition. It is the background assumption behind almost every promise anyone ever sells you. And 100 years of physics quietly saying otherwise never made it into the common story, because the common story is more profitable and more comforting than the truth. That is not a conspiracy of villains in a room. It is something quieter and harder to fight. It is a whole culture agreeing not to look at the one letter, the one lecture, the one thought experiment that would unsettle the story everybody makes a living on. But the physicists could not fully look away, because two of them dragged the argument into the open in a way that could not be dismissed. And here is where I found the hard, named source that turned this from a feeling into a proof. In 1966, a Dutch physicist named C.W. Reetdijk published a formal argument. Then in 1967, the well-known philosopher Hilary Putnam, working at leading universities, published a paper with a title as plain as a hammer. He called it, in effect, Time and Physical Geometry. And in it he argued, step by careful step, exactly what I have been walking you through. That special relativity, taken seriously and not softened, means future events are just as real as present ones. That the notion of things coming into existence as time flows simply cannot survive the relativity of simultaneity. Today, scholars call it the Reetdijk-Putnam argument. And sometimes they add Penrose's name for the Andromeda picture. And the reason it matters so much on this trail is that these were not dreamers. Putnam was one of the most respected philosophers of the 20th century, a man who spent his life being careful. And he concluded, in print, that the problem of the reality of the future had actually been solved, and solved by physics, and that the answer was that the future is already real. That is a stunning sentence when you find it. A serious thinker declaring that a question humans have chewed on for thousands of years was quietly answered decades ago, and that the answer is the one that unsettles us most. And he was not alone at the edges of this. Because there was one more name I had not expected to find, and finding it is what convinced me this was not a fringe idea, but something that reached the very center of physics. Kurt Gödel. If you know that name at all, you know it from logic, from the proofs that shook mathematics to its foundations. Gödel was, by many accounts, the greatest logician since Aristotle, and he happened to live down the road from Einstein in his final years. In the same small town in New Jersey, the two of them walked together, talked together, and were genuinely close. For Einstein's 70th birthday in 1949, Gödel gave him a gift, not a card, not a bottle. He gave him a mathematical proof. Gödel had found a solution to Einstein's own equations of general relativity, describing a possible universe, a rotating universe, in which you could travel along a path through space-time and arrive back at your own past. A universe with real physical loops in time. Now, Gödel was not merely playing. He was making a philosophical strike, and he aimed it straight at the heart. His point was this: if the equations of physics allow, even in principle, a universe where you can journey into the past, then time cannot be the flowing one-way river we imagine. If the past can be reached, the past must still be there to reach. And if the past is still there, then the whole comfortable idea of moments blinking out of existence as we leave them is simply false. Gödel used this to argue that time, the flowing kind we feel, does not fundamentally exist. That it is, in his word, ideal. A feature of how we experience the block, not a feature of the block itself. And Einstein, in his response, admitted that this troubled him, that Gödel's result raised a problem he could not simply wave away. Two of the sharpest minds who ever lived, walking a quiet New Jersey street, and both landing, from different directions, on the same unsettling place. The flow of time is not out there in the world. It is in us. So now I had it from every side. From Minkowski's space-time block, from the relativity of simultaneity in the train, from the footstep in the hallway and the galaxy of Andromeda, from Reitdijk and Putnam's formal argument, from Gödel's loops in time. Every road led to the same destination, and it was the destination Einstein had pointed at in that condolence letter all along. Which brings me finally to the end of the trail, the reveal I promised you, because I want you to know the exact words in their full weight and where they truly came from, so that you hold the same thing I hold. In March of 1955, Michel Besso died. Besso had been at Einstein's side since their youth. He was, some say, the only person Einstein thanked in his original paper on relativity in 1905, the very paper that gave us the relativity of simultaneity. So there is a perfect circle here. The friend who was there at the birth of the idea that the future already exists is now the one whose death forces Einstein to say out loud what that idea really means for a human life. Einstein wrote to Besso's family, and he told them that Besso had departed this strange world just a little ahead of him, and that this meant nothing. Because, he wrote, for those of us who believe in physics, the distinction between past, present, and future is only an illusion, however stubbornly persistent that illusion may be. Only weeks later, Einstein himself died. So this is very nearly the last thing the man said about the deepest meaning of his own life's work. Not to a conference, not to a journal, to a grieving family, about a dead friend, and about his own approaching death. And what he offered them was not false comfort, it was the literal content of the physics. Besso is not gone. His life sits in the block, every moment of it, fixed and real and permanent, exactly where it has always been. The now in which he was alive did not vanish. It is still there. It is only that our slice of the block has moved past it. That is the secret at the end of the trail. The future already exists, because the past never stopped existing, because there is no universal now that separates them, because all of it is one solid four-dimensional shape, and we are creatures moving through it, convinced that only our thin slice is real. The knowledge existed. Minkowski shouted it in 1908. Putnam proved it in 1967. Gödel handed it to Einstein as a birthday gift in 1949, and Einstein, at the very end, whispered it to a family in mourning. It was always there to be found. It was simply more comfortable and more profitable to let it stay lost under the ticking of a clock. And here is what that gives you. Standing in your ordinary home tonight, it means nothing you have lived is truly gone. Every good moment you think you lost to the past is still there, as real as this one, permanently held in the structure of the universe. It means the people you have lost have not been erased. Their slice still exists, exactly where it always did. That is not a religion, and it is not a wish. That is the plain reading of the physics that runs the satellites over your head. You came here because part of you already suspected that tomorrow was not empty, and you were right, and now you hold the whole trail that proves it. From a lecture hall in Cologne to a quiet street in New Jersey to a letter written by a dying man about his oldest friend. You were handed the end of a search that a comfortable, money-hungry culture would rather you never finished. You are the kind of person who does not just accept the simple story you were handed as a child, the ticking clock, the empty future, the river that only flows one way. You are the kind who pulls the thread until the truth comes loose, even when the truth is stranger than the comfort. That is rarer than you think, and it is exactly the mind this whole trail was waiting for. So, let me leave you with one question, and I truly want your answer. Go stand in your hallway and take one slow step forward, the way I described with the Andromeda galaxy. Then come back and tell me, in the comments, did it change how the future felt to you, even a little, to know that your single footstep just reached across the universe and pulled a distant tomorrow into the settled past? Tell me what went through your mind. Write it down. I read them, and this is the exact clue I most want to hear about. And if you are the sort who refuses to keep paying for what you can understand with your own mind, stay with me. This channel is where we recover the knowledge that got quietly buried because someone found it more useful to keep us in the dark. The next trail I am chasing is just as strange. It starts with a clock that was found running slow at the top of a mountain and normal at the bottom of a valley, on the very same day, both of them perfectly correct. Follow me, and we will pull that thread together, and I promise you it leads somewhere you will not expect. If this stirred something in you, here's where it goes further. Inside, I walk you through the full trail through the block universe, step by step, right where we just stopped. And you can ask me your own questions, and I answer you myself. Not some machine. You'd belong among practical folks like you inside the old way society. Just point your phone's camera at the code on screen, and you can cancel any time, no risk at all.